Hi, and welcome back to the offensive line. My name is Hanson, your host, and we also have here Mia, who is back again.
Hello, I am back.
Yes, she was here as a guest, but now she is here as a permanent member of the show. So, and we're back to talk about the question, why do you think bad things happen? But why do you, just emphasizes, why do you personally think bad things happen? And I think that just kind of gets at something that they need to realize, which is that, you know, even the gospel is personal, right? It's addressing not just everyone, but it's addressing them specifically. So, Mia, what do you think about this question?
Yeah, specifically for this question, I don't use it as often as I do the first question I answered for this series. What do you think the point of life is? But for the few conversations I have used this question for, people bring up karma. And like if they do bad things, then bad things happen to them, which also makes the converse true. If they do good things, then good things happen to them. So then the focus is on themselves.
Yeah.
They're the center. So then they elevate themselves and they're basically the god of their own life, which is what Keon actually talked about when he answered the question, how do you know what good is?
Karma is an interesting thing because you see it a lot, I think, in our world today, but some people, they don't even call it like karma, like, oh, I believe in karma. They actually, that's the rule of life, how they live life. They just think that I'm just gonna try to do as much good as possible because then I know good things will happen to me. And it's interesting because I remember I was teaching through the book of Job in the Thrive group, singles group. And it actually, the concept of karma kind of pops up there as well. I called it the principle of retribution, but you see with Job's friends, or his friends, not really friends, well, they think that because Job suffered so greatly, it must have been because he deserved it. So you see that there's kind of like a reverse karma, like, oh, bad things happen to you, that means you must have been a bad person. You must have done something to deserve it, which we know is not true biblically. You know, that doesn't always happen. In fact, we do know from the book of Job that that's actually not what happened to Job, and he didn't do anything to deserve it. Another way that we can think about the question is, why do bad things happen in general? If somebody brings up the false notion that, you know, maybe even blaming God for why bad things happen, I guess, like how would we respond to that?
Yeah, that's a really good segue into hitting on the gospel, like talking about how we live in a fallen world, talking about sin, and then talking about Adam and Eve, and starting from there. It's also interesting, like when I bring up the gospel, what's pretty relevant today is people think that bad things also happen because they're not, I mean, it ties in with what I just said earlier, like the karma aspect, but this just reveals more of what they think, and they bring up like, oh, I haven't manifested enough in my journal, or I haven't
manifested enough.
or they haven't written down like what they want in their life. So like asking them this question, like we do want to hit on the gospel, and like I said, it helps bring up like Adam and Eve and how they rejected and completely disobeyed God's authority and went against his word. And then I segue from there, but then I also try to make sure like I'm attentively listening and just letting them speak, because then it reveals more of what they're thinking. And that's what sometimes comes up too. Yeah, what about you, Hanson? Since I don't normally use this question often with the people I evangelize to, how do you use this question?
Some of the things that you talked about before, that we talked about before, was about karma and about how people think that this is why bad things happen. And they might say, oh, this is generally why people think bad things happen. You know, or even talking about how God caused bad things to happen. But when we emphasize the you, it's like, well, this is what other people believe, but what do you believe? When that happens, you kind of get at the fact of what their personal beliefs are, and what their worldview is, how they look at their day-to-day, how they look at, you know, if they believe in a higher power or not, if they believe in God or not, what they believe about life after death, things like that. So when you ask this question, you're really getting at their own personal views. I think that's just really cool. It's just a really good question to kind of continue the conversation. right? And then just like you were saying, kind of segueing right into the gospel and sharing about how, well, this is why bad things happen, right? That there was sin that entered into the world, and sin corrupted the world, not just breaking the relationship between man and God, but also man and man, which we see with all the atrocities, on the news, man and nature, and then of course also the most important one being a break in relationship between man and God, which is why most people don't even think about God these days. The thoughtless Christian is a term that they use over at the Recharge Radio, I think, one season. So yeah, so I think it's just a good kind of segue into other people's personal beliefs and kind of continuing and wanting to know more about this person, showing an interest in them rather than just like, I don't really care what you have to say, but I just want to talk at you.
Yeah, that's really good, because even in cold contact evangelism, which is what we do for campus evangelism, which is what Keon talked about. Yeah, not just talking at them, but showing a genuine interest, because that also helps them like open up more and not be closed off. Because there's a lot of people who are like very hostile when you just go up to them and you just want to share the truth. You share the truth because it's the most loving thing to do.
Exactly.
But when you ask them questions, it allows them to talk, and then they open up, and then you have like an in.
Yeah. So we started with the question, why do you think bad things happen to you? We talked a little bit about that. We talked about karma. We talked about elevating people, how people elevate themselves. We talked about having a conversation and continuing to have that personal touch in evangelism, just a general evangelism principle. And hopefully a lot of people were able to get a lot of good ideas or good motivation to want to use this question. So with that, I think this is the end of our video for this week. So instead of me closing us out, Mia.
Do I get the honor?
You can. This is why you're here.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We hope you learned lots. Be sure to check out us on Facebook, on Instagram. Give us a like there. And you can also comment down below, why do you think bad things happen?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Turning the question to the audience.
Oh, yeah, turning to them. So I asked you a question. How bad things are question?
Yeah.
And you can leave a thumbs up as well. Okay.
Nice. And we are the offensive line, Hanson and Mia, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.